My brother won't talk to me or my family after my parents didn't think to invite him and his family on my graduation trip. Is there any way to make amends here? In 2018, I graduated from undergrad. We planned on going to Scotland in 2020, but that trip got cancelled because of COVID. My brother and his wife were originally invited to that trip, but they said they couldn't make it. This year, the trip was back on. I went with my parents and my sister and it was a great time, but my brother was very upset with my parents for not thinking to invite him. As background, my brother had a child during COVID who just turned 3. I love my nephew and love to see him on holidays, but in the past 2 years or so after his first birthday, my brother and his family have been seemingly less willing to be with my parents, my sister, and me. They missed last Christmas for a totally valid and understandable reason, but they stopped coming for Thanksgivings and smaller holidays like Father's Day and Mother's Day because they said they were busy. For my nephew's second birthday, we really weren't sure if we were going to see him because we weren't invited to any birthday party because they said we didn't sound excited enough when they originally invited us. They ended up coming to my parents' house anyway, but I thought the reason they almost didn't let us see him on his birthday was ridiculous tbh. There's been multiple times where they invited my parents to come to their house to visit their grandson only to cancel at the last minute. I think they've only invited me to come over to their house once since my nephew was born. I live with my parents, so I don't know if they think that they would take me along when they are invited, but it's always been when I'm working so I'm not able to go, so I really only see them on holidays. Back to the trip, from my POV, my parents didn't think to invite my brother on the Scotland trip because it wasn't exactly a child-friendly trip. We spent most of the trip in long scenic car rides, visiting distilleries, historic sites, and pub crawling. Plus, my brother started his own business, so I assume they thought he'd be very busy with that. I didn't know they didn't invite him until after the trip, but I didn't think it was that big of a deal. But, there's been a few trips that my parents and sister have taken that my brother is upset about. First, a week-long trip that we took to New York in 2015 for my high school graduation, that my brother was invited on, but he was studying for exams and couldn't make it. Second, a trip that my parents took England to visit my uncle in 2017. They didn't invite any of us kids, but my sister asked if she could tag along and they said that was okay. Third, a weekend trip to Vegas in 2018 that my mom, her friend, my sister, and her friend took. I assume this was a girls' trip, so I don't know why me or my brother would be invited for this. I wouldn't want to go anyway. Fourth, a trip to Italy in 2019 that my parents took my sister on. My mom thought I would still be in my internship for this trip, but I wasn't. So I was a bit upset at first, but it's not that big of a deal. Plus I'm not really a wine person and that's like all they did on the trip, so I'm not sure I'd have much fun anyway. My parents have taken a trip with my brother and his wife before they had their kid too, but my brother says they took my parents on the trip because they stayed with my Sil's family, even though my parents paid for all of their airfare. Regardless of all that, I think my parents should have invited them on the Scotland trip and told them what we planned on doing. That way they could have made the choice of whether or not they wanted to go. My parents both agreed and apologized profusely to my brother and his family and reassured them that there was no malicious intent to not inviting them. They've offered to take them on a vacation that is more kid-friendly like a Disney cruise to make up for it, but they say it's too late and the damage is done. After that, my brother basically cut out all contact with us. That was back in June. This month was my nephew's birthday, so we all got him gifts and my sister was going to drop them off at their house, but my brother said don't bother. Him and my dad were supposed to meet to have a conversation yesterday, but from what it sounds like, it wasn't exactly a conversation. Instead, my brother read my dad a 3-page paper he prepared and didn't let my dad respond to anything. Basically the paper said that my parents don't treat my brother and his family fairly. They paid for my sister's house remodel, which they didn't. They paid for both my grad school and my sister's grad school, they didn't. They're going to pay for my MBA, I'm not getting an MBA nor do I have any plans to do so. That my mom is racist and horrible to his wife, which from my POV have never ever seen and couldn't imagine my mom being like that, and that my mom doesn't treat their child fairly. My dad could ask one question, so he asked how we could fix this and my brother said I don't know, that's on you, you need to reflect. At this point, I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm being dragged into this even though I didn't do anything. He's shown that he doesn't want to talk, and tbh I don't support the way he's treating my parents. He's made me cry, he's made my mom cry more times than I ever wanted to see her cry, And now after this conversation he had with my dad, I don't think he actually wants us to try to remedy the situation. I'm going to keep sending them birthday messages, and I'm going to send Christmas and birthday gifts for my nephew to him directly from Amazon in the future. But it really hurts to know that my brother doesn't want me in his life and that I may never see him, his wife, and my nephew ever again. Is there any way to repair this relationship? Or do I just have to accept their feelings and try to move on? Should I continue trying to have a relationship with them? Or is it better to give them space and wait for them to get over whatever issues they are having? I'm really at a loss on what to do in this situation. Comment. Relationships are more than random get-togethers where you parents frequently make assumptions on availability. There are weekly phone calls touching base with each other's lives, exchanging communication about life events through email and electronic means. He didn't go from a great relationship to a few misunderstandings on vacations. There is more to the story of his relationship to the family. He's in his 30s. They should have been constantly communicating with him for all those years. That's how you have a relationship. He didn't just stop communicating. People make choices for reasons. You seem unaware of them and that's part of your problem. You didn't see each other all the time, but how frequently did you communicate? Text, email, phone calls, FaceTime, posts. You seem really oblivious about communication and connection. How can you judge closeness, if you aren't doing things to keep frequent contact? Why wasn't he complaining to you about your parents? Typically siblings join together about parental issues. You shouldn't be shocked about now. You should see signs running way back whether you agree with his thinking or not. A 3-page letter of resentment is a list of years in the making. A relationship is more than get-togethers. Obviously there's a lot going on here besides the trip to Scotland. Fair or not, your brother sees his past with your parents far differently than you do. Are you sure he's wrong? Siblings can have drastically divergent experiences even though they have the same parents. And it wouldn't be the first time a parent has shown unexpected racism when it comes to a child's marriage to a POC. Take a hard look at things from his perspective. Are you sure there's nothing to his gripe with your parents? Regardless of whether you decide he's wrong or right, if you want to have a relationship with your brother, I think you'll have to make it completely independent of his and your relationships with your parents. Don't push him to mend things with your parents or you'll push him away more. Giving him space just gives him time to think you aren't interested in a relationship with him. But just like it's up to him as to whether he wants to have a relationship with your parents, you'll have to decide if you want a relationship with him. Have you asked him? It sounds like you have your dad's version of what your brother said in that conversation but not your brother's. Full disclosure, I'm estranged from my parents and I don't have any siblings. I would not be surprised if my parents portray a completely different version of why we are estranged to others. If you Google missing reasons, you'll see it's a common thing for estranged parents to insist they have no idea what is going on even when the child has told them. None of that means your brother's perspective is valid though. But I don't know that you really have it from him. If he's willing to communicate with you at all, try asking and really listen to him. Then you'll have more information so that you can decide where to go with this relationship. Your parents seem to have a strange habit of not thinking about their children. It doesn't sound like y'all are close or that you and your brother have any kind of relationship at all, which is sad. My brother and I only talk about twice a month because we work opposite schedules and there's a time difference, but we still text nearly every day. Not thinking to invite him on a family trip is inconceivable to me. Not talking about the trip with him beforehand is inconceivable to me. That's just not how people who love each other act. That general lack of closeness may be part of why your brother is so angry. He may think your parents are giving you and your sister all their affection and attention and he's being frozen out, when the reality is that there isn't much affection or attention to go around. Also remember that your brother did not have the same childhood as you. He's 6 years older, which means he got a different version of your parents than you and it's almost certain he was treated very differently as the oldest. If your parents were more demanding of him, that may color his view of everything. Your brother thinks he hasn't been treated fairly his whole life, all evidence to the contrary. He has invented various scenarios in which your parents were more generous to you and your sister than to him. He has invented that he's been repeatedly excluded when he hasn't. He has pulled away from the family because of nebulous, and probably invented, slights. The problem here is that he has created these scenarios, and no one can prove that his imagination is false. Like all conspiracy theories, you can't make people acknowledge facts. I suspect that his wife is behind the lion's share of what he has come to think of as his ill treatment. After all, if he's not seeing his own family, she gets to spend all holidays with her own family. All any of you can do is continue to invite him to family gatherings and reach out to him periodically if you want. He's making his own decisions.